So, good day from Belmopan. My name is Franz Smith. I am a Belizean writer. I write mainly for young people. But today, my little paper that I've prepared for the Belize Heritage Network is titled "Unbalanced Development: Where are the Arts?" So, the observation that we want to address in this little paper is that Belize has developed politically, economically, environmentally, socially in a number of to a significant degree. For example, the environmental ethic in Belize is notable. Also politically, we are very we would say we are very mature politically. Our transition of governments have always been smooth, probably smoother than the United States transition in 2020. But we note that there are few tangible outcomes that have been accomplished in the creative sector, like the arts and culture. So we're going to talk about this, and we're going to show you some of what the potential is out there, and we're going to make some suggestions at the end. So to the right, we see the depiction of a political event in Belize when the birth of the independence movement in Belize. This is at the last day of December in 1949 when the founding fathers met. So my research generally focuses on the domestic exports of Belize. What I do, I go through all the old paper documents at the archives, and we have come up with some time series data of how the export sector of Belize has evolved from the 1950s up until a few years ago. So I use a number of sources like these. This example that you're seeing here are from the colonial reports, the annual reports. These are from the 1940s, 50s. They started, and they finished in the 1970s. We also get a lot of data from the annual reports of the various ministries, like the Ministry of Health, the agriculture department, and eventually the Ministry of Agriculture. So we have scoured all of these old paper documents at the archives. And what I do, I write notes, the key information. And like for example, we see in this example of 1960, we know that in 1960 Hurricane Abby passed through South Stann Creek. The citrus acreage was 4,000 acres and the grapefruit was 1,000 acres. We see we have hard data there, no? There was an annual citrus field day in Alta Vista. You had sugarcane information, and the ratios of sugar per acre. You have coconut information, and we have awapala information. We have copra information, banana information. So what I do, I take these information and I enter them into Excel. Example we have here is from 1946 to 1965. So I enter the old data into Excel, and we make graphs and just try to understand them, no? So we see here that between the 1950s and 1960s that forestry is on the decline, and our agriculture is stagnant for the most part of the 1950s, but in 1955 you see an increase to the point that agriculture supersedes forestry earnings in the late 1950s. So we see here that in like it's actually around 1955 that that the growth in agriculture really starts, which is um, which is primarily due to sugar production in the north. And actually, the reason for this was that farmers started to use fertilizers in 1955. So we see that agriculture increases the earnings, the exports in millions increases for agriculture, whereas it was around 4 million. That's the total exports of the country, and for forestry was around 4 million. It started to increase with agriculture. Within like 3 or 4 years, like 6 years, it practically doubles. So this is the kind of research that I do. But is this all? Is this all that was happening in Belize in terms of productivity and the creative process? We know that there was also there's a significant amount of art being produced. And we see it, for example, although the mural at the back is the second iteration from the 1990s, we know that this man, Mr. Miguel Villamor, had created a mural previously to this in the 1970s. It was an interesting and important piece of art for Belize. We have people like Mr. George Gabb, who created the sleeping giant sculpture in the 19, well, I'm not sure the year that he did it, but in between that period, the period between the end of colonialism and a young independent nation. Then you had people like Mr. Benjamin Nicholas who was creating artwork. So we see though, we go back to the graphs, so we see though that like in the last graph we showed that agriculture began to supersede forestry in the 1960s, 50s and 60s. But around the 2003, 2004, we see that the next wave that came was tourism, that outdid the foreign exchange earnings from than increased or superseded the gains from agriculture. So this is how it looks. And these data are from the Central Bank of Belize annual reports. Obviously, between 2019 and 2020, with the arrival of COVID-19, we see that there was a precipitous drop in tourism. And we would have expected that from the closing of the borders. But we know that besides these major industries, there is growth. There is some growth in culture, but it has been based on extractivism, where there is little supply to the local market. There are a number of private collectors, but a lot of the paintings and art and sculptures and so on are for export, and there is not much art in the Belize that is sold to the masses in Belize, no, where there is a tremendous need for art, because we are an independent nation, and we should be a lot of our knowledge and our identity should be conveyed in the art, and we should have artists that all Belizeans know of. In Cuba, you have the artists. In Guatemala, in Costa Rica, you have the artists. But why don't we have our artists that everybody knows? But we know they're out there, right? There is a limited supply, but we know they're out there. So we know that there is need for investment in our artists to get their work out there to where it is needed. So I'll give you some examples of these artists and some of the important work that they are doing. So this piece was done by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Herman Figueroa. He is from the Hillview area of Santa Elena, and he did this painting of the birth of the independence movement in Belize. previous to this, I don't think that this has ever been depicted. There is no picture of this meeting. There are notes. There are historical um, um, documentation that it happened, and we know more or less who was there and so on. But nobody has actually visualized this, especially for the children and the high schoolers, and maybe even some of the mature people would want to see this kind of thing. Then there's a gentleman by the name of Mr. Orlando Na from Kamalote who created this piece, depicting the the vision and the worldview of the nationalists that came out of the meeting that we just saw. That there was interest and care for the people of Belize, especially the young and the women in rural areas, and their ability to supply their basic needs for their families. It was an important topic in the 1970s. Then there is this young lady by the name of Ana Osuegueda. She works out of Placencia, who is able to assist in the teaching of math from by introducing the young people of Belize to people like Dr. Arlie Petters. So we see that art can be used to teach math. Because as far as I understand it, math at this level that Dr. Petters does is less about numbers and about more theories. But we need to get our people to take the first steps into getting to this point. We need to get the young people to start visioning themselves in this type of role if we are to become a developed country. We see that art. This is from Miss Osegueda again. Art in the conservation movement. It's very important that we depict sceneries to young children, especially the younger ones, and get them to appreciate art as well as nature. And again, this is Miss Osegueda from Placencia. This is a depiction of the caste war of Yucatan. It's basically an illustration to show the key concepts, the execution of the gentleman in Yucatan and the resulting war and the immigration from Mexico into Belize and the birth of the sugarcane industry in the north. Then we have people like Mr. Helman Chi in Sokots, who has been able to depict the early players in the tourism industry that so many of us benefit from. But a lot of people, they would never see this, they would never hear about it. But if you see it, you can more imagine it, and it can help you to build the story of how this billion-dollar industry started in Belize. Then we have, for example, again, Mr. Herman Figueroa. This is a piece that he created for me to depict the importance of conservation of our forests. And this is very important, not only for culture, but for the environment and for the economy and the social stability of Belize in a time of climate change, when floodings are happening all over the world. We need to conserve our forests in a way that we can supply our basic needs, but we also need to protect our watersheds. This is a key important thing that we need to conserve, and we need to have in modern parts of our economy, like the aviation industry, the transport sector, the mass transit of Belize needs to be improved. The marine transport, as we see over there on the sea. So we see that art has a very important role to play in the development of Belize. It's not only about domestic exports that art can play an important part. So we have to make a little bit of some conclusions and recommendations. We kind of note that there are a few big companies that support artists in Belize. Like in other parts of the world, the banks, all the major banks have major collections that they invest in. As far as I know, it's only Atlantic Bank that has maintained that tradition. And you don't hear about none of the tourism companies, the utility companies. We don't hear about any major art collection, and this is to me a very it's a detriment, right? That other countries where they have big turnovers of money, they stimulate the creative sector, and as a result of that, there's a lot of art that is coming from Melchor that is sold house to house in Belize, and I imagine a lot of even offices, maybe some government offices, are supporting the arts in Melchor, whilst our artists in Belize they have very limited market. Um, the commerce in paintings and sculptures is not on anybody's radar. There's nobody who has this sector as a focus to develop, and we know that this has a lot of potential for Belize to develop our people, not only the artists but the people who can benefit from this art. Um, in many cases, the artists aren't asking for much. All they need is good quality, cheap canvas, and these canvas can be upgraded in Belize. You can put on the yeso and you can use them. And in return for these canvases, our people can bring eventually they can be bringing to you masterpieces, and we know that they can do it. But to get there, we need some help where canvases can be imported and the frames can be made from Belizean wood, and these can be stretched, and a whole entire industry can be created. Instead of importing so many canvases, you go to the art shops and to some of the importing companies that import stationery and so on. They bring in a tremendous amount of stretched canvas, but a lot of these can be produced in Belize if some canvas can be brought in for the artists, and we see that they can create a lot of good things for the benefit of a lot of people, and we also note that there are exports, but we need to start recording these exports to show what this art is valued outside of Belize, and maybe that can help to stimulate the local scene, because it seems that in a number of the domestic exports, the product is of high quality, but it's generally hard to sell in Belize until some other country out there finds your pepper sauce and your well, the main example is the pepper sauce. Some other country out there finds it, like Japan. Then the Belizeans realize that they have something really valuable here, something really good, that everybody should have one, and then they start supporting the local industry. So we just put that as our little paper, and we would like to hear your ideas and your responses. Thank you.